Good morning to everybody and welcome to this new debriefing. Today we are going to pay attention to what's happening in the US. There is a lot of very important development in the US since Donald Trump came back into power with, of course, Robert Kennedy coming as health secretary, Jay Bhattacharya as the head of the NIH. And lately, a number of core studies have actually come about related to vaccinations, but also some legal actions with respect to the Department of Justice looking into publications. And I thought it'd be really interesting to make say a tour d'horizon to look at what's happening with Nicolas Hulscher. He's an epidemiologist and also a director at the McCullough Foundation. As you all know, I've had the opportunity to interview Peter McCullough many times. He's well known to all of you, and I'm going to welcome Nicolas Hulscher on the show. Good morning, Nicolas. It's morning time. Thank you very much for giving us some of your time. We're here for about 20, 25 minutes to do a little roundup of what's happening in the US. Yesterday, I believe it was the 100th day of the Trump administration back into power. There's been a number of communique and communications. What are your takes from what happens ever since Robert Kennedy became health secretary and Jay Bhattacharya came on board?
Oh, ever since RFK was installed as HHS secretary and, Jay Bhattacharya got in there as NIH director, Marty Macri at FDA, we have seen already more improvements, basically since the past, I would say, I don't know, 30 years within just the first 100 days of this administration. And one prime example or I'll give a few examples. So, first of all, and they actually just announced this today or yesterday, was that now they will be forcing vaccine manufacturers to provide placebo controlled trials. So they will have to finally test their products against a placebo group. They can't just roll it out without testing it like they've been doing for decades. So just that, I mean, that's a huge change. And then we had the removal of in America of these toxic synthetic petroleum-based food dyes. I'm not sure if you guys have it there in France. Do you guys have these synthetic dyes?
Yeah, we've had that. I mean, we've seen PepsiCo just react very, very rapidly and in essence change the dyes almost quasi instantly. So it basically means for many years they had the used product that they knew were not sort of human friendly.
Yes, yes, they're not human friendly. They're very dangerous, linked to cancers, neurodevelopmental disorders, all sorts of things. And so finally, those are getting cleared out of our food supply here in America, which again marks the only effort to actually clean up our food supply really in decades. And so we're seeing so many things out of this administration. And we're seeing other things that he is now investigating, such as the link or the possible link between childhood vaccination, these febrile seizures, and autism. That was never really investigated properly. Now it finally is, and so again, so many things. And also RFK has stated he will be looking at what's called chemtrails. What's actually being released? According to him, he recently stated DARPA has added some things to jet fuels, which causes these contrail-induced cirrus clouds, and so all sorts of things that are finally being addressed.
So you look very happy with the developments because as you say, for the last 30 years, there's been very few things that have happened. Do you believe that all of this or all of these actions are really in the interest of the American people?
I think these are, yeah, I think these are for the American people, these actions, to be honest. I don't think they are helping any big pharmaceutical company. It's only going to be hurting the big companies. It's only going to be hurting big food. And I know from what RFK has talked about his whole career for decades and decades. I do believe that he does actually care about the population health. And so, yeah, I think these corruption, this industry capture that we had going on here in America is finally getting resolved.
Well, that is very helpful because in Europe we are not seeing the same movements, but at least we are very eager to actually look what's happening in the US. Now, we all know that when Jeva Teixeira was auditioned in Senate, one of the core elements was restoring trust in research. Because of course, there's the American people, but there are also the American scientists who have been silenced. People like yourself, like Peter McCullough, were called name. You were sort of defamed, invisibilized in the media, and your studies were, I would say, degraded to second round or second class sort of papers. So there's definitely an issue with publications, the handling of publications, the publishers, the way their papers are being retracted. And yesterday, you printed a piece where the Department of Justice is finally looking into this. So not only you have RFK and Jebet Sharia who are in power, I'd say, but also you have the Department of Justice. Can you please tell us what this is all about and how important this is for you?
Yes, this is a huge development. So, what has actually happened within the past few weeks here in America is the Department of Justice has sent letters to major journal publishers, to at least three of them. I think I've read up to six of them. It could be even more than that, but they've sent letters to journals such as the New England Journal of Medicine. You know, we've all heard of that journal. The journal called Chest. It's one of the top respiratory journals. And so these letters are being sent that are asking these journals to provide information as to whether or not they have been biased during the
Yes.
pandemic, whether they have suppressed papers, retracted papers unfairly, or had a certain bias against certain narratives. And so finally, the DOJ has launched this inquiry into these practices. Now, um, as a researcher myself, I have been severely targeted, systematically targeted by these journals and by these publishers. And I'll give a prime example of this. So, one of our studies, it was called or not was, it is, it's not published actually, but I'll quickly go through what happened with this. It's called a systematic review of autopsy findings in deaths after COVID-19 vaccination. This was a systematic review. We looked in the entire peer-reviewed literature for every single autopsy that was ever reported and properly uploaded or published in the National Library of Medicine. And we put it all in an evidence table. All the autopsy findings, all the cases, how many vaccine doses they got, what did they die from, how long after the vaccine did they die. We looked at all that and we had three experts go through the table, independently adjudicate these cases, and we came up with 73.9% of these deaths after vaccination were either due to or significantly contributed to by the vaccine. And we also proved a causal link between COVID 19 vaccination and death. And so, yeah, that's the paper right there. And so I'll tell you what happened with this study is first of all, it was uploaded to the Lancet preprint server. So this is right when we finished. They took it down in 24 hours. That's unheard of for a preprint server to take down a paper, by the way. Like never happens. And they even wiped the text of our paper, so that was gone. And then we finally published it after successful peer review in Forensic Science International. This is one of the top forensic journals. The editor in chief signed off on it. You know, the peer reviewers loved the paper, so it got in. And what do we expect happens to that paper? Well, first, it becomes the number one trending research paper worldwide across all subject categories, according to the International Observatory of Research. So, literally, everybody wants to know this critical pharmaceutical product safety data. And then a month later, a few weeks later, Elsevier, the publisher of Forensic Science International, decides our paper's got to get out. It's got to get out of there. They got to censor it, and that's what they did. They wiped it off the web page again. didn't even let people see the text of it. Usually they'll plaster, retract it all over it, at least leave it there. No, no, no. They wiped it with some bogus claims that our methodology was bad. But hold on, it passed peer review. You accepted it. The publication doesn't work by anonymous people coming on after the fact and just making claims up. And so that was taken down, and then we finally republished it in the journal Science, Public Health Policy, and the Law, where it can now be read by anybody in its entirety. And so that was just one example of what's happened. And we've identified now there's tens and tens of papers that have just been retracted for bogus reasons by these journals that belong to what we call the academic publishing cartel, um, which is a group of these major publishers that seemingly are systemically collaborating and have been working together to suppress vaccine safety research when it doesn't fit their narrative. And we believe this is grounds for what we call RICO violations, which is when a corrupt organization um, is doing bad things. That's what we believe what's happening here. So, um, very serious damage that this publishing cartel, has done to science, to safety, to product safety data that may have even costed lives by suppressing this data. And so, finally, we see some uh, potential justice up the pipeline.
So obviously, you've been subject to this cartel. There are a number of individuals, other researchers, Sabina, and she's been subject to all of that. There's the Peer Network that has been accused by a group called Science Guardians of absence of integrity and potential harassment of or hassling of scientists. And now you have the Department of Justice. Now, have you been audition within that? Are they taking your case or your Nicola Foundation sort of situation as examples?
I hope so. We did provide a list of papers to them that were wrongfully retracted, not to the Department of Justice, but um, to somebody that I'll just say we did send that to somebody, this list. And so, hopefully they do take these and they do look at them because it definitely is systematic. Like this is not, these aren't isolated cases. And this really does come down to lives being lost, right? Because imagine if papers came out showing severe damages from the COVID-19 vaccines, early 2021, even 2022, um, it likely wouldn't have been administered to as many people as it did. And so, very damaging stuff.
Nicolas Hulscher, of course, CHEST, the New England Journal of Medicine, they most likely will have responded. At least I know CHEST responded, and they actually sent a letter claiming they have the highest level of integrity, they respect the law. Now, how much of that response, when you read this and you have lived what you have gone through, how much of it do you think is just politically correct message versus influenced by external forces, whether it's big pharma or other influence?
Honestly, I think that they are definitely influenced by big pharma, by this biopharmaceutical complex we call it, because we see about half of peer reviewers, about half of journal editors, such a large proportion of people that work within these journals receive large sums of money from the pharmaceutical companies. So we can definitely assume they are totally biased for these companies. These big journals, they receive money from them. I mean, this is so of course they're going to do the bidding of who's giving them the biggest buck. And so this can't happen. That has to be dismantled. We can't have this compromised science anymore. It's costing lives again, So hopefully this is something that, can be dismantled because I know a lot of these major journal uh cartels. They just think they can do whatever they want. Publish only what they think is true. And that just can't happen. They should actually have to give people of all forms of perspectives onto their editorial boards, so it's fair and balanced.
Mm. So, Nicholas, you think that between RFK Jr., Jay Bhattacharya, this action by the Department of Justice, we are heading in the right direction to respect, I would say, scientists and to ensure that science acts really in the interest of people?
Yes, we are moving that way. Science will now be acting, at least I hope, in the interests of people. There are still some red flags that we have detected, indicating there are still people that are compromised in the US, right? We're not fully clear of this corruption. And a prime example is that our FDA, our Food and Drug Administration, did recently fast track a self amplifying bird flu injection. These are basically mRNA shots on steroids, and fast tracking it did raise a lot of eyebrows, a lot of concerns. We still haven't heard a real explanation as to why they fast tracked something that would require decades of safety testing. And so, hopefully, we hear more about that. So, still people in there that still, want to push and do pharma's bidding, but overall, it's moving in the right direction.
And how long will it take for the Department of Justice to, well, I mean, of course, they've just sent letters. They have to go through a normal process where they have to instruct a charge and a discharge, I would say, in order to ensure that justice is made in the right sense. How long will it take them to actually get to conclusion, in your opinion?
The speed of the government, unfortunately, seems to be years and years, and so that's the main problem here. We know this these important investigations, they shouldn't be taking years. We got to accelerate these things, right? Like, take for example, like the lab leak of SARS-CoV-2, right? I mean, what, it took them like years, and like 4 years to finally admit it came from a lab. But they actually knew it like basically right away. And so, we got to move faster, right? We got to move faster. We got to improve things faster. Um, we improve the health of the populations as soon as possible, because birth rates are now collapsing worldwide, fertility rates are collapsing, and so we definitely got to get the health up of people. We got to get the birth rates up, and if we still allow big pharma to push whatever toxic products they want, we will eventually have irreversible population collapse.
And this is, of course, a real issue. And you can't really tell how long is a piece of string. But if the FDA is still fast tracking these decisions of these self amplifying mRNA, we could expect politicians such as RFK Jr. or the head of the NIH who give a push, because Jay Bhattacharya seemed to make that top of the list to actually restore the trust in publications. So, do you think that at one point there will be like a shift over? It will just balance, and then suddenly everything will come out, or it will be a gradual improvement?
To me, it appears it's going to be gradual. That seems to be the way they are taking. Because if it was just a sudden improvement, I would have expected them to just completely, like, right when he got in, to just cut the mRNA shots from being given to 6 month olds, right? Because that should have happened. But they're obviously being careful. They're treading carefully, and so they're taking this long, drawn out, careful approach, maybe to avoid a major distrust in the government, or panic it even. And so, yeah, unfortunately, I think they are moving at the speed of a snail. But that's just what's going to happen. But it is trending in the right direction. So I am happy.
Nicolas Hulscher, what else is happening in the US that would be of interest for the French viewers of France-Soir to know?
Yeah, in the U.S., here in the U.S., I think what needs to happen next And it's not only a threat here in the US, it's a threat to France and the world, is a gain of function research with these biological laboratories, these high biosafety level BSL-3, BSL-4. At least here in America, we have over 1,000 of these biolabs. And many of these are conducting gain of function research. We are making pathogens more transmissible and deadly to humans. And this is going on unchecked. Basically, nobody knows which lab is doing this. And, any of these labs can risk a leak. They can leak out one of these modified pathogens. They've been working on bird flu ones for decades. And so they have these sitting in freezers, right? They have these modified pathogens um, literally just sitting there. And there could be bad actors that want to release these intentionally, or they could accidentally leak these. There have been a few hundred lab leaks since 2001, according to a recent study by Black Cell and colleagues in Lancet Infectious Diseases. So the most important thing I think we should do now is stop this gain of function, prevent a man-made pandemic, another one that kills millions, and destroy these modified pathogens from these laboratories. They don't need to be there. They don't need to be in existence.
Okay. Well, so at least this is a very clear path. But I thought that these gain of function research were not supposed to happen in the US since the Obama administration.
Oh, they did. They canceled it. They put a pause on it in 2014 after this bird flu gain of function. But then they resumed it a few years later, and ever since it's been ongoing. They haven't stopped it. I am aware that the Trump administration does have an executive order planned. This has been reported now to finally put an end to it, and so we are hopeful that there will be an end to it. But it hasn't happened yet. It's got to happen.
Well, Nicolas Hulscher, thank you very much for your time for this interview. So things are moving in the right direction in the US, although there are still some serious issues like the fast tracking of this mRNA self-amplifying vaccines or these research labs, as you mentioned, but it's only been 100 days and it's slow moving, but let's ensure that slow does not actually mean stop, and that if you continue to push, it will work forward. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Thank you very much for everybody to follow us. I think it's important at France-Soir that we give you the voice of America as well as the voice of other people, so that you can hear it from the horse's mouth, as they say, as opposed to the bird's mouth, as opposed to the media, because I trust more when I actually hear somebody like Nicolas Hulscher come and talk on the show than when reading the mainstream media. Thank you very much, and have an excellent day. And you're always welcome to come back whenever you have more news with respect to your own research or whatever that's happening as a Macular Foundation. Thank you very much. Have a
Thank
nice
you
day.
so much for having me.